listening to.
You're listening to.
You are listening to.
You're listening to.
Again, and you're listening.
You're listening to
Active FM.
Active FM.
To Active FM.
FM.
To Active FM.
Hey, and welcome to the Political Show right here on Active FM, where radio has never been better. I'm your girl Cynthia, but you can call me Gigs, and with me in studio we have
Gavin Ensslin.
Pastor Gavin Ensslin and
The Black Knight.
the Black Knight.
None of us on Zoom.
No.
Yeah.
Not like June.
Oh.
Zoom in June.
And we have coffee.
Because we all had COVID. Now we all have coffee. we much prefer COVID to coffee.
True.
No, prefer coffee to COVID.
Oh, yeah, I said that wrong.
Okay, that was a lie. I said
that
true
was a
to
very
that.
big lie.
That was a lie.
We much prefer coffee to COVID. We
Yes.
don't want
True
COVID.
now.
Coffee.
Yes.
Addicts.
Yep. Exactly.
Yes, right here.
Two things we're addicted to, Jesus and coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jesus first, coffee.
Yes, I was going to say in that order.
Yes.
But they both see Christ in coffee.
Yes. Yes. So like I said, you're listening to the Political Show on Active FM, where Christ politics is
Hot politics.
hot politics, and this week's hot politics is
Well, we want to kill someone. That's how hot it
real.
is.
It's real. It's real.
It's worse than quarantine camps.
Yeah. Actually. Yeah. Yeah. In last week's episode, we
Was-
were
was
debating
bad.
on whether or not we should have the Black Knight on this episode, because if he tries to do something, he wouldn't.
I have repented.
I'm
I
joking.
have repented.
I'm
You'll find out what cancel culture is. We're just canceling.
yes.
Not from the show,
Yeah.
from life.
But we wanting to be basically speaking about this whole thing of the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And do you want to explain what exactly, in terms of the pandemic of the unvaccinated, we're speaking about?
Joe Biden, President Cyril Ramaphosa, Boris Johnson, all of these people, they're coming along and they, as politicians, and now Piet Mouton, who is the CEO of a company, a significant sized company in South Africa called the PSG Group. And they're coming out and they're saying that COVID-19 is now the pandemic of the unvaccinated. So it's only the unvaccinated who are getting it, and it's only the unvaccinated who are dying of it. And we're actually going to be looking at an open letter that he wrote to the South African Society, and I believe he should be arrested for that letter.
Yes.
Because freedom of movement is guaranteed within the South African Constitution for every citizen of the Republic of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of association is guaranteed to every member, every citizen of the Republic of South Africa.
Yes.
And freedom of speech is guaranteed to every citizen of the Republic of South Africa.
Yes.
And so we can go on. And this guy, because of his opinion on COVID-19 and his opinion on the vaccine, is saying that people that don't get vaccinated must be cancelled from society. We are freaked out.
Yeah.
Even Black Knighties.
I'm not happy.
Not at all. So it's
Black Knight so cross, he might become the white light.
yes, it's quite hectic. It's
Very
so
bad, guys.
It's going to be quite a hot show, because firstly we are the Political Show. I mean,
Yeah, it's normally hot. Now it's furiously hot.
yes, and
Furnace.
because we're also on Active FM. That was Eternity by Reactive. How awesome was that track?
And Piet Mouton wants us to be locked down eternally.
Exactly. If you don't get vaccinated, then according to Pete, #cancel you, basically. Yeah. But Reactive is still awesome. Yes. So, Piet Mouton wrote an open letter to all South Africans, and the letter was published on News 24. News 24, yes. News 24 or Fine 24. The financial...
Fin 24. Yeah.
Fin 24, yes. The financial part of
They must
News
take their
24.
publication to the sewage farm.
And he basically says, if you don't want to vaccinate, then the burden of lockdown should be yours and yours alone. That's what he says. He carries on and he writes in the letter, we need to lift all lockdown restrictions as soon as possible to place the country on a path to higher employment and economic recovery, which will only be possible through widespread vaccination. Those stubbornly choosing not to vaccinate not only pose a health risk, but also an economic risk. You are free to choose, but you are not free from the consequences of your choices. What are your thoughts on that first before we carry on?
Yeah. The consequence of your choice not to vaccinate is, first of all, if the vaccination works,
Yeah.
which is not scientifically proven. All right? There's still a lot of water's got to go under that bridge before you can say this vaccination is, works. And they've had to change the definition of the word vaccinate. And they've had to change the definition of the word vaccination in order to allow this thing that they call a vaccination or a vaccine to fit, the definition. A vaccine used to mean that you basically received what was called sterilizing immunity. So you'd get like a dead version of the virus or the bacteria, and this thing would be injected into your arm. That would cause your body to build up antibodies against that thing, that pathogen, so that if you came into contact with a live one, your body had the antibodies that were needed to destroy the live one, and then you wouldn't catch the illness. That was vaccine. That my whole life, that's what a vaccine has been. The reason you went for a smallpox vaccination was so that you did not contract smallpox.
Yeah.
All right? And so I can go on. Now, with this vaccine, we know for a fact that that's not the case. They've had to change the definition. Now they are saying it prevents hospitalizations. But then it's not a vaccine, it's a therapeutic.
Yeah.
But the reason why they need to call it a vaccine is because if it's a vaccine, then in South Africa, the US, and many other countries around the world, the vaccine maker, the drug company, are immune from prosecution. So they have to fit it into that category legally, or else you can sue them if something happens and something goes wrong. So he's talking there from the assumption that that this vaccine stops the spread of COVID-19. Now, that is not happening.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go to Israel, that is most definitely not happening. And in fact, we're going to challenge that severely later on in the show.
Yeah. Black Knight, what are your thoughts?
It's just to touch on what Pastor Gavin just shared with the whole thing of changing a lot of things or rights, if I can say. The question would just be, why do we? Because if this is the case, then why do we even have rights to claim to protect us if they can be changed at any time? And why do we have a constitution? Because does it mean that we needed a pandemic for these rights and everything that stands for humanity to not exist anymore? Because it's equally to that. Because if these rights were meant to protect us, why are they not doing that now?
Yeah.
And so for me, that would be the interesting thing that
Yeah.
I would obviously want to challenge.
Yeah, he carries on and he says in the letter, yes, it is now 18 months since the first lockdown, and we are still in uncharted and perhaps even more stormy waters. For one, the unemployment rate has increased from 30.1% to 34.4%. The increase of 4.3% points means approximately 1 million more people are now without jobs. And he carries on, he speaks about the whole thing of the unemployment in South Africa, and then he also speaks about the social unrest that happened in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, which are two provinces in South Africa. And he says, however...
I'd like to say something. That had absolutely nothing to do with COVID or the lockdowns. The second thing I'd like to say about that, when they locked down, we warned that this was going to happen on the political show. We warned about it on the Situation Room program, which is so accurate that it's been banned off YouTube. All right. And we said that the lockdowns were going to be economically disastrous.
Yeah.
And they've actually caused far more problems than what they've solved.
Yeah.
So to use that argument is pathetic
Yeah.
because he agreed with the lockdown.
Yeah.
Most of South Africa didn't.
Yeah.
He is in the minority.
Mm.
And now, as a minority person, he wants to force his view on the majority.
Yeah.
Who does he think he is? Just because he's some special CEO? Just because you're the CEO of a corporate? Not even the president is allowed to say what you're saying, sir.
Yeah. And then, so after explaining all of that, he says, however, we have the means at our disposal, something that will strengthen government's hand in reducing restrictions and that can prevent further economic deterioration. The
So
solution
first
is the vaccine.
Yeah, first of all, the government doesn't have to give restrictions.
Yeah.
When the restrictions, we've said it a million times, I'm going to say it again, till I'm blue in the face. When they reduced, let me rather say, when they removed the restrictions on the taxis, the taxi industry, the minibus taxis in South Africa, the people were in there and almost no one was wearing masks. There was no social distancing. The windows were closed. It was cold. August 2020 was cold in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And yet the numbers plummeted.
Yeah.
If their theories about social distancing, PPE equipment, and all of that held true, the numbers they were declining.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been a turnaround. They would have shot back up again,
Yeah.
and that didn't happen. In fact,
Yeah.
when we had this level of opening, the numbers plummeted, indicating a very strong possibility that the lockdowns may actually make things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And to say that the solution is the vaccine, it's not like once everyone gets vaccine now, all the people that lost their jobs will get jobs back. All those that are dying of starvation and whatever will
suddenly have
eventually
food.
food in their cupboards and things like that. That's not how it works.
No.
And also, he's not a doctor.
Yeah.
Well, the issue is that the data is not showing what he's saying,
Yeah.
because heavily vaccinated countries have got far more infections than what South Africa does. And I think we're going to have a lot more infections when more of the population are vaccinated too.
Yes.
Which means there's a lot of evidence looking around the world that vaccines increase the prevalence of COVID-19, not a little bit, but dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
to add on that, if we're looking at our country, South Africa specifically, people are not really keen to vaccines, hence why we have a low rate like this. And if companies themselves have to mandate vaccines and now fire people, that means the company itself might have a problem to actually make it as a company, because now you have shortage of staff, because now you find that most South Africans actually are not keen with the vaccine. So I think they're not thinking about that if he's a business person, that mandating vaccines also might also be a hard thing here in South Africa and might also affect the economy itself,
What if he mandates someone in his company to get vaccinated and they die?
which will
And
even
then,
make
and
it
then on
worse.
top of it, the authorities, then, the person takes the vaccine perfectly healthy, they die within 3 days, and then the government puts it down to something else.
What
So-
happens to that family?
That'll make it's just a disastrous situation in South Africa.
Yeah.
All of this.
Yeah. He carries on and he says that those that don't take the vaccine are inconsiderate and selfish. It is quite apparent that those countries that have vaccinated a large enough portion of their population have reopened their economies. The UK is one example where the vaccination percentage is high and the government has done away with most restrictions. Even though the number of infections have increased, the number of hospitalization patients and deaths rate have materially decreased.
So how's the person who doesn't take the vaccine selfish?
Can ask that again?
All right. I mean,
Because-
he's selfish because they've opened up the UK, even though the numbers have increased. We were advocating for opening up the society a long time before vaccines came along.
Yeah.
With our high numbers,
Without vaccines.
without.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's crazy to say, because we look at UK, they have a high infection rate and
Yeah.
we have a low infection rate, and we have less people vaccinated versus the UK. They have more people vaccinated, but I don't understand, like it doesn't, like, yeah.
Can
I
I
don't
tell
know.
you something? I don't know.
Someone?
I can make it
Oh.
worse.
Oh,
Okay, so one of the things that's happened now is they've opened up the schools.
Yeah.
So the schools are fully open and there's no restrictions. Okay.
Sure.
So they were expecting that in the first 2 weeks after schools were reopened, because at this point the kids are not vaccinated.
is this with us? You're saying
No, in the UK.
in the UK? Okay.
So they were expecting a huge increase in COVID cases. And then they opened the schools, the numbers went down. So now the guys, I listened to Dr. John Campbell, Dr. Or Professor Tim Spector. They were saying we're going to have a huge rise in cases because of the schools opening. And then the schools opened and they dropped. The only place that it's going up that I saw this week is in Scotland, and they don't know why.
Sure.
They don't know why. Well, I think it's the vaccine.
Yeah, I would say.
There's a lot of, and that's crazy because now there's a lot of, since I'm not hating on the vaccine, but let's look at it. Since the vaccine, there's a lot of, we don't know why something is happening. Before then, it was finding out because we were all finding out about the virus, but we had safe measures, like washing hands, sanitizing, masks, and all of. We had something
Which made no difference.
Okay, yes, it. But at least we had something to say. Okay, we have an idea.
Yeah.
But here it's coming out as everyone is just throwing everything on the floor, like we don't know.
Yeah.
Like all of the sudden, the scientists don't know.
Yeah.
It's not all of a sudden.
Okay.
They haven't known from the start.
But
listen,
they've been claiming to know.
listen, let me tell you something. In March 2020, who were the ones that were saying everyone's going to get COVID?
It was
Christian pastors.
Oh,
Pastors were saying it. I said it.
look at that.
I wasn't, and a lot of pastors said it.
Yeah.
A lot of pastors are saying, why are you bothering with a lockdown? Okay. If you say we need to lock down for 3 weeks or 5 weeks in order to get the hospitals ready, okay, we can accept that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But after that doesn't make any sense. Because we said everyone's going to get COVID. What did the health department say in the UK about 2 or 3 weeks ago? Listen, everyone's going to get
gonna
COVID,
get it.
whether you're vaccinated or not. Okay? And so we're suggesting you take the vaccine so that you got less of a chance of dying. So now this guy comes along and he says, you're selfish if you don't get vaccinated. Okay? Really, that's pathetic, sir. Because the only way you'd be selfish if you don't take the vaccine is if you can pass infections a lot.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. What makes this worse for me, you know that there are scientists, and by the way, I said this in April, May,
Yeah.
about India. The Delta variant came out of India. At first it was called the Indian variant, till the Indian government complained. Then they changed it to Delta. Okay, so I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And if you look, there was a serious uptake in the vaccination campaign in India. And they went from nothing in February, March, to have vaccinated about 10% of the population. Now in India, if you vaccinated 10% of the population, doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 130 million people that were vaccinated. Guess what? It was about a 2 or 3 week gap between when the vaccines went up and the cases went up and the deaths went up. And so I was saying at the time, and I think Black Knight agreed with me. He didn't argue like last week. But it looks to me like the vaccine's causing that.
Yeah.
Now there are papers that are saying that.
Yeah.
There are medical studies that are actually saying that they believe that the Delta variant came out of the mass vaccination campaign that was taking place in India.
Yeah.
Because although it was only 10% of the population, 130 million people is a very sizable amount of people. And the virus had lots of people within to mutate. Bam, out comes the Delta variant, and that thing has just swept around the world.
Yeah.
So if that be true, and I'm looking at the data, so I think it's very likely true. If that be true, then that means the vaccinated should be the ones
Yeah.
that we lock in away. But we're not like that, Mr. Mouton. Your Royal Highness the CEO. We're not like that. We're not going to lock you away just because you took the jab.
Yeah. And if in South Africa, if majority has to rule,
Yeah.
It's a democracy.
It is.
if majority rules, come on, we have the unvaccinated are more
Yeah.
than the unvaccinated.
And in
so-
his letter, if you go and read it, you'll
I
see he
think Black Knight needs
continues.
to correct his sentence. He said the unvaccinated are more than the unvaccinated.
Then the vaccinated. Did I say that? Okay. That's
Well,
a clash.
If you carry on and you read his letter to the South Africans, he says that those that are not vaccinated should just be restricted from malls and businesses and things like that, saying that we shouldn't be, basically, those that haven't been vaccinated shouldn't be part of society.
So then why
That's
doesn't
what
he
they say.
petition the courts to have a referendum? And this is a democracy.
Yeah.
Mr. Piet Mouton, you're not the king, you're not God of this country. So petition the courts, let's have a referendum.
Yeah.
And if 50% plus one vote to say yes, cancel the unvaccinated, then we go with your proposal because it's a democracy.
Yeah.
If you don't get a majority, then please keep your letter to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says that the responsibility of all of these things, and he even says that the deaths, those that die of COVID, are on the hands of the unvaccinated.
Now, even there, again, the Mu variant that they're talking about now, which, again, Christian pastors predicted last year. That's the worst part, eh? Okay?
Yeah.
So the Mu variant is totally vaccine resistant. Totally. And there are concerns being expressed that it's way more deadly.
Sure.
And there are medical scientists and doctors that are very concerned about the third booster jabs that are happening in Israel,
Yeah.
because they believe that that's where the superbugs are going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you get superbugs in hospitals.
Yeah.
All right. And no one gets a superbug without there being the indiscriminate use of antibiotics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So when doctors use antibiotics indiscriminately, they produce drug-resistant superbugs,
Yeah.
which kills people that have an extended stay in the hospital.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, my sister-in-law passed away. She had COVID. You know, it killed her in the end.
Right.
It's because of her extended stay in the hospital. She was starting to recover, and then she contracted 4 superbugs.
Sure.
So the superbugs killed her, not COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can go there for an extended stay for anything. You'll probably get killed. The first time I heard about a superbug, there was a guy that used to work on a team I was managing in about 2003.
Yeah.
And his wife went to hospital because she got very sick with rheumatoid arthritis. While she was in the hospital, she contracted a superbug. Developed pneumonia that killed her.
Sure. Yeah. So now a lot of people are like, oh, but there's no side effects, or you can't find side effects of the vaccine and things like that. And if you go on a lot of websites or you look for articles and stuff, most of them will say that the side effects are fatigue, nausea, the small things, and
Which
stuff.
has happened to be COVID symptoms.
Yeah. Or, well,
Just saying.
basically, I mean, when I had COVID, I was very tired. I very, very tired.
And very many people were very nauseous.
Yes.
Myself.
But so what happened now during the meeting when they were considering granting emergency use authorization for the vaccines, the FDA had a presentation and stuff. So now this is even
Which provided such a present for all of us.
right. This is when they were actually going to approve the emergency use for these vaccines, and stuff. And then people actually caught that they accidentally.
Yeah, they accidentally
by
put up
mistake.
a slide.
Yeah, a slide that showed over 20, not 5,
20.
not over 20 side effects, which include strokes, death. It also includes...
Imagine the side effect is death. One of the side effects of this drug is you die.
Right? Kawasaki disease, vaccine-enhanced disease.
What's Kawasaki? Is that a motorbike?
No, I know it's a motorbike, but Kawasaki disease...
No, just carry on. We'll be messing around.
is a serious disease. Pregnancy and birth outcomes, which were obviously negative. It wouldn't be a side effect if it wasn't negative.
Miscarriages.
Yeah.
Issues relating to infertility.
Yeah. Autoimmune disease.
Which is the biggest risk with COVID.
Yeah.
Is the autoimmune part of the disease.
Yes. Transverse myelitis, which has to do with your spine and stuff, infection in your spine. Meningitis. It also includes seizures, convulsions and stuff. And you won't find these side effects in a lot of articles, in a lot of
Even though there's
websites.
videos of people at vaccination sites having
Yes.
seizures and convulsions. Or there's even been 1 or 2 videos where people have literally dropped dead.
Yes. And they knew all of this before they allowed the vaccines to go through and stuff. And that's not what they're telling you. They don't tell you about these things. And it should be a person's right to choose. You shouldn't be forced to choose whether or not you should get
No,
the
I'm
vaccine.
actually taking it a step further, because with some of the things I've seen now in the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
Geeks, I'm going to be honest with you. Never mind the right to choose. I think the people that have put this vaccine out there, and also the people responsible for the virus, because this virus is man-made. There's no doubt about that now. We've actually got the emails of Anthony Fauci.
Proved, yeah.
And you know Dr. Glenda Gray,
Yeah.
who's one of our fantastic coronavirus doctors in South Africa. She's in cahoots with Fauci, because the previous lot of emails that came out a few months ago, there's emails between her and Anthony Fauci. So all of these doctors are in cahoots. And remember we spoke about the theory.
Yeah.
We know now for a fact that this virus was engineered,
Yeah.
but Fauci not only told them to engineer a virus and put these 5 things into it, 5 diseases into the one virus. Okay, we knew that last year from the study that the lab in India did.
Yeah.
Now there's emails that have come out where Fauci is instructing them to do that, and he's instructing them to create the vaccine. This is prior to 2020. So at the end of the day, we know for a fact this thing was created, and we also now are utterly convinced that, as we said before, that the government's allowed this thing to spread on purpose.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the Chinese, all right, because they locked down China, Wuhan from the rest of China, but they were allowing international flights to fly out of Wuhan to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So this was a planned thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's why that movie Plandemic, they say it's conspiracy theory. I think it's very accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.